Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this beautiful Stadstimmerhuis. Welcome to an event supported by Architecture Institute Rotterdam, AIR. Welcome to the third public event of, by now what we started to call the Ukraine, the Netherlands Urban Network, or UNUN, as we affectionately call it, emphasizing the spirit of international collaboration in our network. My name is Chris Luth, and it is my pleasure and privilege to facilitate this event tonight, the third in a series of public events that aim to contribute to reconstructing Ukraine. Why is it a pleasure and a privilege? Well, because the sessions have been inspiring in terms of content, but especially in what we might call the courageous optimism of working on reconstructing a country during an ongoing war. We have a beautiful program for you tonight, consisting of a 1.5 hour plenary discussion, followed by a 1 hour, let's say, orchestrated network session next door, in which everyone can update each other on what they're doing, ask each other questions, and explore how to further your collaboration. So when you're listening to the discussion in the next 1.5 hours, you can keep in mind which questions you might ask to each other. Before we go into the details of the program of tonight, I would like to invite somebody very special to the stage, and you probably will know her. She is co-founder of UNUN and one of the initiators of this series of events. She is the perfect person to give us an update on what UNUN has been working on since our first event on May 20th and our second event on the 22nd of June. Please give a very warm welcome to Oleksandra Tkachenko.
Thanks, Chris. I will need to do a bit of technical adjustment. And thanks a lot to Gemeente Rotterdam for hosting us today here in this beautiful building. Just today when we discussed with Chris about how, for the preparation for this event, that we managed to create this very positive energy in a collaboration and talking about the reconstruction. And then I was like trying to prepare for this event and thinking about this positive mood. And then after that, I went to check my social media and my news. And I found out that today is a funeral of one of the architecture activists in Ukraine who died in the front line. And I thought, like, why we all getting together? Because we care. And these people who fight, they do it because they care about their cities, about the culture, about their relatives and people around, about the planet. And actually we also gather here because we care, in the contrast of the other side. And it's also the reason why people came in May for the first event, because they care. Most of them, they had no clue why they came. They just feel that there is a need to come. And that's why also after the first panel discussions, people started coming to me and asking like, okay, what next? What do we do next? I mean, I had no clue. And actually what we've been doing afterwards is discovering and trying to understand how we should organize ourselves and how we can help in this situation. And this is how we ended up having UNUN, Ukraine Netherlands Urban Network, which is the network of Ukrainian and Dutch spatial professionals in Netherlands. Just to be sure, because actually, there are a lot of initiatives in Netherlands, and you might heard about others, but we really wanted to be specific that we will focus on special characteristics of these collaborations. And what we decide that we are actually doing is building this professional network for Ukrainian reconstruction, and this network is for the mutual inspiration, cultural and knowledge exchange, and spatial transformation, with a focus on spatial transformation. For now, we have quite some people joining us, and it doesn't mean that they are very active. Some of you, I mean, there are many familiar faces. So some of them are very in the core, being active, doing something. Somebody just occasionally, somebody just know that things are happening around and know that from time to time to reach us out. And we also realize that there are people with very diverse profiles, and that's how we start grouping a bit to realize to be a bit more effective. And even after that, we realized that, okay, it's still not enough. We're still a bit chaotic, so let's be a bit more efficient. And in this way, what we have now, our kind of heart, the content production, let's say, the context exchange is formed with a pool of experts that group now in how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups. The first one, a group which focus on the program, building the website, organizing the networking events and inspirational events. The second one is on the educational and bridging the educational institutions between Dutch and Ukrainian ones. The third one is on urban development, and during our talks we realized that how they can contribute the best now to and help Ukraine now is mainly a focus on sharing this experience of visionary and strategic planning. Then the group of sustainability, which is still trying to define what they're doing, so maybe some of you could help with that. Group of landscape, a group of architecture, one of the most active, I would say, and housing policy group, which is also working tight with Ukrainian. Out of each of this group, there are people that took a lead of this, so it's quite a horizontal structure now. And during the networking part of our program, you would be able to talk to all of them. And quite often they work in couples because, these volunteering things, it takes quite a lot of energy, and yeah, you need the support in this case. And to make all of this work and to organize these events and all this facilitation, for that we have a management team and a support team which does all kind of occasionally things like Instagram, PR, and these kind of things. So this is basically how we build our network. Who knows, maybe it will adjust a bit later, but this is how we realized we could function. We also know that we are not alone who doing something, but like on the right, you can see that what we realized that we kind of a bridge in Ukrainian and Dutch institutional offices, universities, municipalities, also with people who flee here, Ukrainian, but also the ones that stayed in Ukraine. We're not alone for doing that. There are, of course, embassy, both Ukrainian embassy here and embassy in Netherlands or in Ukraine are doing the same. And there are some also international institutions doing similar thing, and they contact us, and we've been already discussing, okay, how we can do, we're doing similar things, so how can we collaborate and arrange, being more efficient in this way. We also do have a lot of different kind of projects. Basically, each of the group decide what they can do themselves, what is more efficient for them, but there are some general things that happen these are the studio visits, organized by Het Nieuw Institute, and each group decides what kind of studios would be helpful for them to visit, for exchange. There is a website now is online that Sarah helped us to build with the job searching opportunities. We help with grant applications, and I would like to congratulate some of the girls who today got the green light for the applications. There are lectures coming, which are organized by Sarah and Het New Institute, but also Amsterdam Academy is already broadcasting some lectures to Kyiv universities. There is a studio course ongoing with TU Delft, public events like this, articles publishing, and there are some, we also contact with Ukrainian, there are some requests from Ukrainian cities like Trostianets, Lutz, village Tsirkuni, institutions like Dipromisto, Ukrainian Association of Urban Planners, local universities. So it's always like a reflection on what is needed rather than what we want to do. And these are the people who, one of the most involved in the in this event, in this network. And we will bring this back during the networking event because this is kind of faces that you will look for during the drinks. And I would say that in general, this is who we are, what is UNUN and what we're doing. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sasha, for this overview. And you mentioned the death of an activist. Sorry for your loss, and maybe our loss, in a sense. So thank you for sharing that. This is a This is quite a contraption behind me, as you can see. And we're going to continue an experiment that we started on our first session in May, in which I'm not only the facilitator of this event, but I also take notes, which is very unusual, but we believe it serves a purpose, so I'll explain in a moment. Our discussion tonight consists of 2 panels with 4 speakers each. I will ask them questions, and they will update us, giving an overview of their initiatives. I know this is not legible for everyone, but for some of you it might be, and it will be helpful, hopefully, for our panelists. Our panelists will update us on their initiatives, creating an overview. From that overview, we hope that some kind of synergies will emerge, and visually recording that overview will help these synergies to emerge, is our hope, our belief. So and we will find complementarities in this overview. Furthermore, issues of mutual exchange might surface. So yeah, this whole project is cultural exchange, not a one-sided transfer of knowledge. So these issues might emerge as well. And finally, if we're lucky, we can get to the meta aspects here on the right. And the meta aspects involve sort of what can we learn from this entire process for possibly similar future events or future, let's say, international collaborations. So first of all, we want an overview. Hopefully we get some synergies. Perhaps we discuss mutual exchange, and ideally we could also get some ideas, some meta ideas about what we can learn from the entire process for future processes. I hope this makes sense. Finally, this whole session of 1.5 hours is merely a warm-up for what happens afterwards, which is the real event that takes place there. And that's the one-hour networking session in which everyone can ask each other questions. And Sasha will explain a little bit how that works on the end of the session, because it's orchestrated in a specific way. So, with that said, are you all ready to listen? So you know which questions to ask each other? Are we all in? I see some slight hesitation. Let's get the excitement going. Panel number 1, which consists of 3 speakers, and I will just invite them to the stage one by one. First of all, we have a senior researcher from Planbureau voor de Leefomgeving, or PBL, which is the Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency. He's also a professor of land and real estate at the University of Utrecht, and also connected to the Amsterdam School of Real Estate. Please give a warm welcome to Edwin Buitelaar. Secondly, we have a mobility expert from Mariupol, who before the war already started working on international projects on municipal capacity building. He is co-founder, if I'm not mistaken, of Rosgrid, the urban coalition from Ukraine, and also connected to Utrecht municipality. Please give a warm welcome to Nikita Biryukov. And finally, the last participant of this panel, Ukrainian, trained as an architect in Ukraine, based in the Netherlands for many years, where she did many things. She is a member of the District Council, or Wijkraad of GroenLinks. She's a program director of the Ukrainian House in Rotterdam, and she has a very interesting project called Vataha, which she will explain more about. Please welcome Oksana Savchuk. So the questions I'm going to ask you are basically the same for everyone. Please update us on what you and your organization have been doing recently. That is the first question. Secondly, do you see any questions maybe outside of your organization that are relevant for our update? And perhaps a personal role that you play in this. So there is a microphone which you can share. Would you like to begin, Edwin? And I'll try to sort of concisely summarize what we do here. I don't know if it's fully visible to you. Maybe we can rotate a little bit. We'll make it work. Would you like to start, Edwin?
Sure. Well, about the question, what have I been doing so far? I think I can be relatively short. I haven't done much yet, but I intend to do a bit more, a lot more maybe. I've been approached by Julie Lawson. I don't know where's Julie at the moment. Oh, there she is. Who's very active, I think, in this network, and she said, well, wouldn't it be good if the PBL, Netherlands Environmental Assessment Agency, which I work for, one of the organizations that I work for, would be involved a bit more than it is at the moment. Maybe I'll leave it there, and then maybe first explain what PBL is. Is that relevant in this?
Briefly.
Yes, I suppose that not everyone knows that. PBL is a government-funded research agency between science and policy. And what we try to do is transfer scientific knowledge to politicians and policymakers. So what we do is we advise the government, the ministries, the cabinet, on all sorts of issues related to the built and the natural environment. So we do a lot of research on housing development, urban development, the energy transition, the circular economy, climate change, climate adaptation, everything to do with the built and the natural environment. 250 people work in this organization, and we are based in The Hague. So there's quite a lot of knowledge present in the organization. So that's probably why Julie approached me for this question. And talking about this also with Sasha, we came to the idea, well, why not organize a conference on urban recovery in Ukraine. So that is what we are planning at the moment, and we have a date. It will be the 15th of February 2023. And we will focus very much on housing development and urban development. And we want to bring together experts from Ukraine. So all of you present here today, very much invited. Experts from the Netherlands, because obviously the Netherlands has quite a big tradition, I think, in terms of knowledge on housing and urban planning, although lots of people would probably say nowadays that it's waning a little bit. But anyway, and we want to invite lots of interesting experts to talk in public, but also some decision makers, hopefully, who can express some sort of long-term commitment to the issue of urban development and housing development. Yeah, that's probably the main thing I have to add to this discussion, and maybe after that we can do more. But this is probably the first step.
Great start, Edwin. We have a conference on the 15th of February, and we're all invited. So that's a very good start.
One thing, which would otherwise be a very ungenerous omission, it will be together with the Board of Government Advisors, CRA.
CRA, who will, we will have a panelist in the second panel from CRA.
But they will be involved as well. So
together with CRA. Thank you very much. And CRA is the College van Rijksadviseurs, or the Board of Governmental Advisors, for those who don't know, CRA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening all. My name is Mikita Birukov. I was working in Mariupol City Council in a role of mobility planning and public transport. And now I'm working for Gemeente Utrecht, also in this direction. And we develop these questions of how will good sustainable and mobility planning. And I also not a co-founder but member of Rosquit. Yeah. And it's a big team of urban planners, and we try to make this methodology of rebuilding Ukraine not only like a housing, it's a general ideas. We separated on some groups like mobility, housing, economical decisions, and other things. My role is mobility group. Yeah, and we try to write this methodology how it must be in a cities, like sustainable development of mobility, and connect with all the cities. And now, especially like my work and my colleagues it's a pilot project on Mariupol, because there's totally destroyed all this infrastructure, all electricity infrastructure, all buses and trolley buses. So, and we try to think how we can manage with it, with like green mobility, and combine it in one core with the reconstruction of the roads when the city will be unoccupied. And I think now there is the most important time to think about the planning, because when will city unoccupied, the municipality will not have a time to think and plan something on this time. You need to get there already with a good plan, with good strategy, so how you can make it and develop and renovate it.
And this was by Rosquit, you mentioned. So this was a mobility sort of strategy or plan, or how shall we call it?
Methodology.
Methodology.
Yeah.
Rosquit updates us on a mobility methodology, let's say a green mobility methodology. And the first pilot of that is Mariupol, and we need to start planning now.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nikita.
Hi, I'm Oksana Savchuk. Before the war, I used to be an architect and academic researcher. After the war, I became social worker. I'm coordinating our Ukrainian house. Is a project from municipality where people from Ukraine get all sort of help administrative, humanitarian aid, and a meeting space where they can all meet and have lots of interesting events. Yeah, in Rotterdam, at the Pleinweg 196A. All are welcome to pass by. But besides that, besides 500 visitors per week and lots of volunteers, I also have free time to do other projects. So I noticed that there are limits to human emotions, to empathy, and together with lots of amazing people, we decided to do something about it in the field of culture and arts. So we started an NGO called Wataha. And it's going to be a platform to build a bridge between Ukrainian and Dutch culture and arts. Not sure yet on the scales, but we got our first project. And it's with these three amazing women here, and it's going to be a house of home or job site. It's a school for Ukrainian teenagers, a school of architecture, urbanism, and spatial planning, with the idea that we can give 7 weeks training to 30 Ukrainian teenagers who are in the Netherlands to reflect on the concept of home, to bring their experience to another level, with the idea that they will be the one who will be rebuilding Ukraine too, and the voices should be heard. So thanks to Stimuleringsfonds, we can do this project with Het Nieuw Institute from December on. And also, we have lots of activists and projects in the field of literature, cinema, visual arts. About that I can tell you more later.
So is this Wataha NGO established by the Ukraine House in Rotterdam, or are they independent?
No, it's an independent project because Ukrainian House is a temporary location from the gemeente Rotterdam, and I'm employed by VMO-RADA, which is sort of social workers organization. I don't even know how to translate it to English. So I felt the urge to to have an NGO which is independent from municipality, where we are free with Ukrainians to do what we want to do.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned we're all welcome in the Ukraine House, and it was number 196A. Which street was it again?
Pleinweg.
Pleinweg. I'll just write it down. So we're all welcome there, everyone. And apart from that, so we have two things to tell us. I mean, Ukraine House, maybe quite a few of you already knew it. The Wataha NGO, with help from the Het Nieuw Institute and Stimuleringsfonds, focuses on a weekend school for teenagers, a platform to connect Ukrainian and Dutch artists, people in culture. And you mentioned the word empathy specifically, because you think that is a problem or difficult or necessary.
Well, the human psychic is like self-protective, so at a certain point you don't have much empathy anymore. You see the numbers in the newspaper and it's hard to feel empathy. At a certain point you stop crying. At a certain point, after 500 visitors per week, I stopped listening to stories of people and I asked volunteers to do it because it's a psychological thing. So we need to find a way that Ukraine does not disappear from the newspaper and kind of doesn't just bring the sad numbers, statistics, missiles, etc., things to it, but also brings something positive or something else. Keeps the attention in another way, which is less traumatic for you and more positive.
Emphasize the human aspects behind the newspaper articles and also to give some hope, I hear you say, between the lines.
Exactly. Yeah, the hope is a driving force, of course. And it's the main goal to kind of keep that alive.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is a brief overview, so we have a start. My question is how to continue this conversation now. So ultimately, it would be great to find some synergies. Of course, the second panel will also help with that because we'll have a bit of a larger overview. aspects of mutual exchange, meta aspects of what can we learn from this, and also banal aspects, but very important aspects of what is actually needed to bring our shared cause further to help the reconstruction of Ukraine. So, is there anything you could say about what is needed? Maybe already some ideas about synergies or ideas about mutual exchange or even some meta aspects? I know I'm asking a lot from you, but let's see how we can continue this conversation and something will emerge from it, I'm sure.
Well, maybe connecting to your last words when you talk about empathy and hope, what I would like for this event that we are organizing in February is very much an event of hope. So to think about urban futures in a very positive way, not just in terms of recovery, which is obviously very important, but also how can we make better places, which I think if you think in those terms could also be a sort of, well, hope giver. I know it's a very small contribution, but I think that can be key. And maybe connecting to what you were saying about this mobility pilot in Mariupol, I think it would be very important also, if you think about urban futures, to really think about not just the housing development and the recovery, but really also how do you connect that to infrastructures and how do we create better places. So it would be very nice if you could also take part in the event that we are organizing to broaden the scope of urban recovery.
Broaden scope. Oh, I think it's going on. Let's see. Thank you. So not just a positive, like hope of making places in a better way, but also a more sort of integral, broader scope of connecting, for example, housing and infrastructure. So these are sort of things you feel that are needed right now. Other things that are needed right now in general to bring our cause further. Maybe Nikita or Oksana. Do you agree with Edwin?
Yeah. If we're talking about the mobility, you always need to connect and think about like housing, about the business, about economical structure of the city, and connect these all things in the same core, because you need to like move people for their activity. Yeah.
You need to move people for their activity.
For their activity, yeah. From home to work, from work to shop, and like
okay.
This.
So the very sort of spatial connection of infrastructure.
Yeah.
We also need connection in the sense of a broader scope, and we need human. Is there perhaps another microphone while I do it like this in the meantime? Thank you. Can you hear me at the back? Thank you. So, and also human connection. So we have three kinds of connections we see now. Okay, that's a start. Yeah, is this the main thing now? I mean, we can also go to...
Somebody else have initiatives to share?
In the audience, you mean, or in the... Yeah, well, we have a few minutes for this panel, so we can... We'll have a second round with further initiatives, but perhaps somebody can either briefly share an initiative that perhaps relates to this, or perhaps build upon this need for connection, a broader scope, the need for hope, these issues. If somebody would like to respond to that, or perhaps add to that. Shall I just... Yeah, sometimes it works.
Hello everybody, my name is Oleksandra Tkachenko, and I'm with my colleague now preparing to program for educational program to Ukrainians about in topic which Netherlands is amazing. It's landscape, it's urban development, and some of these topics. So if somebody wanted to work with us a little bit in this topic or take part in program, we just format a program and think about prepare it. So welcome, and I will be here.
urban reform, please work with us. Thank you very much. Any other comments or additional building up on what has been said already?
Can I say one more thing? Maybe to add a little bit, what this whole event is an offer from PBL to see if we can help a little bit, but it's also the other way around. So if there is any demand from the people here for an organization such as PBL for certain things that we can do, knowledge that we can provide or organize things, please let me know, because I don't know what is needed exactly. So please help me.
What is needed? Let us know. Thank you very much. That's a great. Well, either now or during the network drinks afterwards, there will be a great conversation to have with Edwin. Since the atmosphere is a little bit timid, for multiple reasons possible, maybe we should already go to the next panel and see if we can sort of reconnect, using that word again, to what you've already mentioned. And if not, we'll just go into the network early, I would say, which is why we're all here perhaps anyway. So thank you for this first round. Thank you very much. Do we have all our speakers for the next round? There's still a little bit of WhatsApping going on, but let's start with our first speaker in our second panel, who is part of VNG International, which is the Vereniging van Nederlandse Gemeenten, or in English, the Association of the Netherlands Municipalities, and they have an international sort of part, which is their International Cooperation Agency. So the International Cooperation Agency of the Association of the Netherlands Municipalities, VNG International, and has a lot of experience with aid projects to municipalities international. Please welcome Julia Westerveld. Thank you. Our second speaker on this panel is a person from an initiative called CRA, which we already have mentioned, the College van Rijksadviseurs, the Board of Governmental Advisors, and also part of the Independent School of the City. And he's been involved in this series of public events since the very first one, which was actually in the Independent School of the City here in Rotterdam. Please give a warm welcome to Mike Emmerich. Can I already know? Then we go to another speaker in this panel, who is a Dutch person, co-founded Work for Ukraine, a Dutch initiative that offers organizations guidance in working with Ukrainian migrants. Please welcome Jarek Stollega. We might have an additional speaker who hops on along the way. Let's see. Welcome all of you here. Thanks for being here. You see how it works. Briefly, who is your organization, in as much as that is relevant? What has your organization been involved in? Can you please update us? Perhaps a little bit of your own role. And finally, if you see initiatives outside of your organization that are relevant in mentioning, you're also very welcome to mentioning them. Who would like to start? Perhaps Julia?
I have a long story, so maybe.
Yeah. Three long stories. Well, then I think you should start, Julia. Oh, you have a short story. Jarek, thank you.
Okay. Is it on? Right, cool. So my name is Jarek. I founded Work for Ukraine this summer. And Work for Ukraine is just a small organization. It's really just me and my partner who is in the back there. Gerhard and me, we worked for 7 to 8 years, mostly in the Middle East, with Syrian refugees in Lebanon and Jordan. And we, both coming from the Netherlands, found that actually there were too many people coming from the Netherlands and from other Western countries helping Syrian refugees, and there were too few Syrian refugees part of helping other Syrian refugees. So earlier this year, before Putin intensified his war in Ukraine, we already thought, can we do something a little bit differently here? Can we try to figure out how we can give refugees a bigger role in their own lives as refugees? And then, of course, the war intensified. Refugees, many of you, of course, in this room today, came to Holland, and we thought, will Holland do a better job? And I think after 8 months here, the answer for me is no, we're not doing a better job than what was done in Lebanon and Jordan. And I was very disappointed by it, but it did give us an opportunity. And that is for us, Work for Ukraine, also what we're trying to do. So we're trying to help highly skilled Ukrainian professionals find work, not just any work, but work that matches their level of expertise and their background. Because we're only with 2 people, we started with 2 people, we started small and we said we focus on psychologists that can provide mental help and mental care to other refugees here in the country. So now we work, after 5 months, we work in about 14 towns and cities, including Leiden and Gouda. Most of them are in Holland. And we've been able to provide work to 4 psychologists now, who work with about 60 to 100 people in shelters. And they provide them with weekly sessions, either individual or in group. And most of it is what we call low intensive care, which means that it's just a simple session where you can discuss your problems. Problems maybe you found when you came here, or problems that you currently experience in your life as a refugee in a shelter. So why am I here today, actually? Because this is not, of course, about spatial planning or anything. I think I'm here today, at least that was what was asked for me, is to discuss also to see how can you set up something like that within a Dutch system, because the system wasn't ready for this at all. And still today, when I say with a level of pride that we already found work for people in about 14 municipalities, it also means that a further 300 plus municipalities still find difficulties working with Ukrainian psychologists, even though in every municipality there are Ukrainian refugees that are in need of help. So I have more questions also here today than answers. Hopefully I can provide a few here and there, but it's also still a search for us to see how can we improve our journey with these large Dutch public organizations to figure out strategies with them that help them to employ Ukrainian refugees. So previous panelist, I think sitting here, Nikita, he found work in Utrecht already, I think in May or something, or in April, long ago. From August, not even that long ago. So it was, how long were you here in the country? 27th of July. So in 2 months or 1 month, sorry, you found work. Well, that's the sort of experience we'd like to replicate a lot more. But yeah, not many yet.
Okay,
so that's the story. Longer than I thought, actually.
Thank you for kicking off this panel with your story. You were talking about Work for Ukraine, in which you help Ukrainian refugees find employment in the Netherlands, focusing specifically on psychologists to start with, who can then help in sessions, low-intensity sessions with with refugees. And you worked, and the struggle was sort of how to set something like that up in a Dutch system and working with Dutch public organizations and how to strategize for that. Maybe briefly, you mentioned a disappointment with how things were going. Could you briefly shed some light on what you were disappointed with? And perhaps, if so, how Work for Ukraine is targeting and doing it better or contributing to improving the situation? Very briefly.
Yeah. So I'm not disappointed in people at all, actually. I think I've found a lot of people that are willing to help. But the systems they're working in, they're not designed to help. They're designed to just continue as things were, let's say, before the war. And I'm disappointed in how inflexible the system is and how incapable people in those systems are made to change them. And I know that's a little bit, maybe it sounds a little bit vague, but it's exactly like it is. So how do we help? We just try to break it down. Very simple, very practically. So we just guide them step by step, day by day, week by week. Very simply put, usually I think when you have the ambition, we want to work with Ukrainian refugees, you do so out of a feeling of enthusiasm about doing this, about helping someone. And that's the starting point. But then you start to work and days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months. You need to keep that level of enthusiasm to keep going, not to feel the disappointments of, oh, this is a bit different than I had expected. Maybe there are cultural differences. Maybe the working languages make things a little bit different. Maybe your own bureaucracy or organization make things a little bit different. All these aspects matter. And after a few months, you feel this sense of disappointment. Your project ends with a Ukrainian refugee. Maybe you think, that was okay. I've done my part. Now let somebody else do it. And we say, we're trying to keep that enthusiasm with you by helping you along. So that in a few months you say, we want to work with more refugees instead of less.
Okay, so Dutch systems are very good at continuing the status quo. To change something within that. They can be inflexible. You help people to keep their enthusiasm by breaking down how the system works and helping them along the way, holding their hand in a way through the Dutch system. Thank you very much, Eric.
Hi. Yeah, as you explained already in your introduction, I'm here on behalf of two organizations. So the Independent School for the City, which I'm the director of, which is based here in Rotterdam, and the Board of Government Advisors, which is based in The Hague, and I'm an advisor in urbanization and mobility in the team of the Board of Government Advisors. So I wrote it down because it's quite a lot, actually, the update. So maybe just to start with the Independent School for the City, what we've been doing. So we were part of organizing the first event or the first meetup for this network, together with Oleksandra, with a lot of people actually here. And that was because of a reason, because that school, the Independent School for the City, is founded by two offices, Crimson, the office that I'm also part of, and SUS, Urban Planning Office here in Rotterdam. And especially with Crimson, we've done a lot of research on the reconstruction of Rotterdam. And the reason to get involved in this, in organizing this event was both because we find it. We have a school here, we have a space here. We try to disseminate knowledge around spatial planning to spatial professionals, but towards everybody actually that works on the city. So it's from sociologists to architects and from historians to urban planners. And we try to bring in our knowledge about what we know about the reconstruction of Rotterdam, both the things that went well, but also the things that didn't go so well. So, and also questioning like how could cities in general or areas that have to reconstruct, whether that's after war or natural disaster, what they could learn from Rotterdam. And that was also for us a drive to remain involved with the UNUN initiative. And well, what we're doing in the school is something that I think we can offer to the network as well. Is we organize a whole series of events, debates, courses that deal with, let's say, the bigger challenges that today's cities face. And I think all of these activities can be interesting for many of you to attend. And they're relatively, the threshold to join, especially the public events, is quite low. We ask €5 for ticket entry, and we can always make arrangements for people that cannot afford it to still participate. So, well, without promoting the website, but I think this is something we can offer as a school. And also, like, if you have a good initiative or you need a space, let me know, because often we can, in that practical sense, really assist in offering our space. And I think there's two things worth mentioning in that respect. So in December, we're organizing, and I'm going to say it probably wrong, but a Vyshevanka workshop. Is it? Kind of? Okay. So Ukrainian embroidery technique, and we're doing that with a Ukrainian architect. Using this embroidery technique also in an activistic way, as is done in the war. But also use it as a way of cultural exchange and well, getting Dutch professionals and Ukrainian professionals together. And somewhere in 2023, we will organize a one-week workshop about the reconstruction of Rotterdam. It's not the exact dates are not planned yet, but it will be done. And I think that would be also an interesting platform in which we can continue this debate about like what can we learn from Rotterdam and what does it mean for the reconstruction of Ukraine. So that's basically what I wanted to say about the independent school for the city. Can I continue or no?
Please do.
Yeah? Okay. So the other role that I have is the advisor at the Board of Government Advisors, and maybe to explain a little bit what it is, because it's like the PBL, it's a bit of it's not in every country the same. So the Board of Government Advisors, it's me and my colleague Saskia Naafs, who's sitting over there as well. Oh, over there, sorry, I didn't see. Wrong page, wrong person. No, the Board of Government Advisors, it's kind of interesting because it's the head of the Board of Government Advisors is the chief government architect, who used to be the person building the palaces for the king. So it's a role that exists for 200 years already, but it transformed in being an advisor in spatial planning and architecture quality control in architecture and infrastructure projects. And it's an independent position, so we're embedded within the central government, but we can give solicited and unsolicited advice, and thereby trying to raise the quality of spatial planning in the Netherlands. That's basically what it is. From this perspective, we thought it was super important as well to get involved with the UNUN platform to share our knowledge about spatial planning, but also maybe to broaden our scope of work a little bit, in the sense that such a position could also be really valuable if you think about the reconstruction of Ukraine or Ukrainian cities. And we're part of the government, so that gives some flexibility and some budget that we can chip in the UNUN network. So we took the initiative to build this website, unun.nu, to also provide a platform for everyone here in the audience. And what we want to do on this website is to bring together all the activity that is created here in the audience. So it's a couple of things. What it does, on the one hand, it gives updates about what's going on in the network. There will be activities on it that, such as these ones, but also lectures that are being organized, studio visits that are being planned, workshops that our partners are organizing. So it tries to kind of give you an overview of everything that's going on within the network. And there is an aspect to it which is like a matching website for Ukrainians who are looking for work in the spatial sector, and for architecture firms, urbanism firms, but also for municipalities to put their job application or their job offers on that website, in which they are also open for people from Ukraine, which of course is, not every organization works in English, we're trying to actively kind of contact also municipalities and governmental organizations to say like, hey, are you willing to kind of do an extra effort, hire someone from Ukraine, not just to help people with a job, but also in the sense that it helps with exchanging knowledge about how things in the Netherlands are being done. So one of the kind of conditions, or one of the things that we ask from the people that offer a job on our platform, is that they also allow the person that they hire to spend a little bit of their time on the UNUN network, so that it really feels back into, well, the community here. Yeah, so I leave it to that.
Thank you very much, Mike. In a moment, I will introduce you. Thank you for coming. Glad you made it. And I first will continue asking a few questions about what Mike just told us, because he told us a lot, both on the independent school and on the Board of Governmental Advisors, which we call CRA, sort of in Dutch. And you say, okay, the school has a lot of events. Check out our website. Two things especially that are coming up in December: an Ukrainian embroidery activism workshop. Why is embroidery relevant?
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm the one to answer that, but we were approached by some people from Ukraine, and well, it's really uncomfortable to explain your tradition, to be honest. Huh?
How do you explain? It's cool. That's
okay.
how you understand.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so okay, it's a traditional embroidery technique in which the different patterns also are some type of language, right? So everything means something. It's not just looks amazing; it also really means something. So
meaningful embroidery.
Yeah. So it's a way to. Yeah, it's a language. It really is a language. So it's a way to express yourself. And it's currently being used also to embroider camouflage nets in the war.
Oh,
so it's really put into an activist use also during the war. So I think therefore already it's super relevant.
Interesting. Before I go to you, I'm just checking your faces. Okay, I think you wanted to say
something. Did I say it correctly? I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay.
I think you want to add to that, so I'm going to introduce you now anyway. Our fourth speaker on this panel has just arrived and is a Ukrainian sociologist and PhD candidate at Tilburg University, studying Nigerian migration to the EU, did a bachelor in Ukraine and a master's in the Netherlands, and co-founded Opora Foundation, which you'll probably say more about in a moment. Please give a warm welcome to Maria Shaidrova. Before you go into Opora, perhaps maybe a brief response to what Mike was saying.
Yeah, that's exactly what I say. I'm also not just sociologist, I'm a sociologist and visual anthropologist, so I use a lot of visual techniques. That's why talking about embroidery, it's always, I think, Ukrainian is the language of resistance, starting from the very, very beginning. And also for communities that are illiterate, and a lot of people in the villages in Ukraine were illiterate for a long time. For them, that was that language of resistance, basically a language that they wanted to preserve, with which they preserved their culture, but also communicated about themselves. And I think that's why during the war, embroidery has gained a new function, I think, and a new resistance. And maybe it was also transformed into a new form. And this is exactly what I think was already mentioned by the embroidery, or the way we use nets to actually resist the Russian occupation. Yeah.
A language of resistance, beautiful. I'm glad I asked this question because I had no idea. Thank you for explaining that. Mike, also a one-week workshop on the reconstruction of Rotterdam. Great, and let's all join, and we can see also if there are relevant similarities or lessons to be learned from our mistakes here in the city. We also discussed about that quite a lot in the first session of this series. And CRA is you like to share your knowledge, you'd like to broaden your scope as an organization, you had a bit of budget, you build UNUN.nu, and check out the agenda for all kinds of updates. And one of the most important ones, not just the like lectures and things like that and workshops, is the job matching board, where you demand that participants who get work spend some time on UNUN.nu. Great. Yeah, it looks like you want to add something to that.
Well, maybe just the only thing that I want to add to it is that in a lot of the events that we organize or that we try to initiate also from the Board of Government Advisors, sorry. No, it's a lot of collaboration. So the studio visits are together with the New Institute. We're part of organizing the conference with PBL. So there's a lot. We're trying to kind of use our network as well to kind of get them involved or to help out with other initiatives that are related to UNUN.
So you're not only saying to everyone, please join our events, but also please help us in organizing events and tell us what you need for us to organize better events, perhaps even.
Yeah.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Mike. Let's go to Julia and then to you, Maria.
Yes, so I'm actually super happy to see how many people are in the room and just to meet so many of you, you know, with heart in Ukraine in your heart. So yes, I'm from VNG International. It's a semi-government organization here in the Netherlands, and it's equivalent. And our main partner in Ukraine is the Association of Ukrainian Cities. Maybe some of you know them. My profile is I work in kind of governance sector and advising local governments on reforms, how to implement the reforms from national level, as well as outside the Netherlands, as well as advising Dutch municipalities on internationalizing and the EU guidelines and reforms, how to implement those. So we work in Ukraine since the founding date. It's more than 20 years now. And since 2016, quite intensively in Donbass region, Kherson, and also in Kiev with ministries, different ministries. So we built quite a good network in those 6 years, and are now, we also have a local team there, and since the start of the full-scale invasion, we supported, or like our activities in the organizations were focused on two things. First is direct financial support of the Association of Ukrainian Cities, and for that we set up a fund that was filled up by donations from SVNG and the Dutch cities. The second part is that we just started a new project, and at the moment we are doing an assessment with almost all Hromadas in 3,000 regions in Ukraine to see, to kind of map up the damage and what needs to be done and what can be done by the Netherlands. Once we are finished with that, we will be working, or how to say, bring Dutch municipalities that are interested in cooperation in contact with the Ukrainian ones. We try to focus on Hromadas that are not heavily popularized or like a bit unseen, since the bigger cities are already getting a lot of attention. And our activities will be focused on, among other, spatial and urban planning, on local economical development, and what else? So reconstruction, not the hard reconstruction itself. For that, we will intermunicipal cooperations, and we already have some partnership relations between the Dutch cities and Ukrainian cities. So we will continue building up on that. Those are, I guess, the main activities we'll be working in the future. And the third kind of activity or support what we did during the summer, especially, is connecting, for example, Ukrainian parliamentary delegation and other experts from Ukraine, and facilitating meetings with the Dutch cities. That's my story. It's actually shorter than I thought.
3 things you mentioned, Julia. VNG International already has been creating a local network for 6 years, as I understand it, in Ukraine, especially in the Donbass region and Kiev. Kiev, I should say.
Kherson.
Sorry?
And Kherson.
And Kherson.
It's a patronate of, according to the patronate system, it's a region that Netherlands is planning to support with reconstruction.
Great. So 3 regions. You have a fund There's damage mapping in 3,000 regions, you mentioned?
3 regions.
3 regions, oh, I
in
misunderstood.
In the south of Ukraine.
I was a bit surprised. And you have a sort of a matchmaking that's going to happen, I think, after the war, if I'm correct, or maybe already starting now?
Once the needs assessment is done, then we will start working on this. You know, it's like one of the points I try to mention as often as I can, that Weiterbau reconstruction needs to start now. The planning, the contact between counterparts need to start now, because you need time for drafting the plans, you need time for funding, finding the funding, especially if it goes through government. Yeah.
So it looks like you've been working on this for a long time and with a lot of partners and are very much embedded in the local context, which is great for everyone who lacks that. I'm sure many people are embedded in the local context here, but some not, probably. So that's great. And you focus, for example, on spatial planning and economic development in this matchmaking. And you also organize expert sessions with parliamentarians and other experts, for example, here in the Netherlands.
It's more that we support if they already have a planned visit here, then if possible, we facilitate meetings at VNG. But it's not, we don't organize exchanges and kind of learning sessions yet. But usually it's capacity building is one of our core activities.
Great. So Mike actually and some other speakers invited people to join with their activities or to come up with sort of ideas for initiatives. Do you also have a call for action or an invitation to our audience? If not, that's okay. I'm just wondering if you do.
So I'm happy to be a part of the UNUN network, and once we have planned the specific kind of implementation plan and activities and everything, I'm sure I will use or dig in to see, to look for some expertise.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, clearly VNG International is not a sort of a public institute like the School of the City is, so it's not completely fair maybe to ask a question, but I think it's, thank you for that answer. Maria, you're here. By now you've calmed down and settled a bit in, and you understand fully, I think, what the session is about. Can you give us an update on what you and your organization have been working on? Mainly that, and perhaps if there's any thing you see outside of your organization worth mentioning, we'd love to hear it as well. And our goal is to create an overview of initiatives and then hopefully find some synergy where there's complementarity and see if there's aspects of mutual exchange which could be relevant, and maybe some meta aspects which when we zoom out, what we can learn from this entire process, which could be relevant for other future processes. Does it make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
That's the full update. The word is to you, Maria.
Yeah, I think that I can start a bit how the organization came into be and what it achieved in the last 8 months.
Opora.
Opora, yeah, it became Opora. We started out as a small group of, so I'm a migration researcher and I have been studying migration for the last 8 years. So of course, when the war started, and I have been living in the Netherlands 8 years, and I study migration here in the Netherlands, I was like, okay, I know exactly what is going to happen. So for me, that was a moment of my life, and I thought finally I'm not representing Nigerian migrants, which is I already found very problematic. I can use my skills to build something for people whom I know the best, because I'm part of them, and my family is here, and my sister is here. So this is a bit how it started, and then together with other friends, which are our other academics or consultants, we gathered in the first week of war. There were 5 of us thinking, okay, what can we do on a national level? So not locally, but nationally. And it was a crisis moment. So whenever there is a crisis support, the first thing you have to give people information. So part of it, that was our first goal. So we started finding platform or organization we can use to provide people information. Meanwhile, we had a lot of contacts with IND and other organizations, so we could update this information. So that was our first project. The first ever website about information was Help Ukraine NL. That was part of Ukrainians NL, but we were not part of them. So we were kind of using their platform because we were just people. So that's how it started. And afterwards we thought people need questions, and there are no translators. There's nothing. So we created a pool of 300 translators who could actually cover that up. And the third part, we thought people need to ask questions, so there should be a help desk for people. They should call somewhere, especially in the beginning, while all other organizations are a bit slow. And I think that's the problem with the Netherlands, that we are not the best in reacting to crisis because we have never seen something like this. And usually when you have migrants, you have relocated migrants, and only a small part of migrants can actually come all the way from Italy, for example, or from Greece to the Netherlands. So that means that in this way, there was no border, so people could actually cross the border, and there was no control where they stay. So there was no overview. And that pretty much also put people in a very vulnerable position. They have no information, no language, and they were just coming. So this was our 3 months of our activities were focused on actually making sure people know about it and scale up as soon as possible. So we scaled our team from 5 to 40, and then we all took vacation for 3 months, basically, to be able to constantly do it. And of course, our team is mostly all professionals working this year. So in this way, we just use our professional background and skills to be able to react to crisis. And in parallel with it, we try to establish contacts with the government and municipalities and the most important organizations that will be key players in the whole system after some time. And exactly, it was a parallel activity. And in April, we thought, okay, the war will not stop soon, and the government is very slow, so we need to push them for long-term strategies. So that was our first meeting with Minister of Justice in Den Haag. This organization was not even formed at that moment, and we were trying to say and predict with all kind of knowledge we have that if you don't think about long-term strategies, if you don't think about the fact that people will be probably kicked out of the families before summer, you will have another crisis, and you don't want that, because these are not just like 20,000 people. We're talking about increasing from 70,000 back then and increasing now to 90,000+. So it's not something you're used to, but you have to react. And the way, of course, the municipalities, the government decided to manage it is decentralizing everything, which has its own...
Which word did you say?
Decentralizing.
Decentralizing.
So the way they manage the crisis is that the gemeentes are responsible for managing it, which has a lot of pluses in the fact that the good municipalities with good management can do amazing things without asking for approval from the government, but the municipalities that are not used to it cannot just manage the people. And that's, I think, that's what we started seeing. There was misinformation, people were treated very unequally, and our team, we made a decision, okay, we thought that the government would pick up our initiative, they didn't. All our initiatives that were crisis support, they cannot be crisis anymore. We have to professionalize them. So we had the psychological support with 160 psychologists and 200 cases that were growing. We had legal support with already 200 cases covered. And then we had a help desk with in April, sometimes we had 600 days of calls a day, basically. So we thought, okay, that doesn't help. With Red Cross and helpline, it helped us a bit, but we were all doing it as volunteers at that point. And then we thought, okay, we need to come to the next point. So what our organization will be about. So we cannot do crisis forever. So we managed it. We make sure that all these 3 that I mentioned were covered. Now, what is next? And then we decided to actually look at the projects on the ground and through services that we give, escalate the problems that we see to the middle point, meaning the municipality, if that doesn't work, to the government and media, so that from 0 we go to escalate the problems up to the end and propose all the time a solution for it. So whenever there is a problem, we already right away lobby for a solution. And I think a good example, so we have now 4 projects, and a good example would be the project with psychologists that we did. So we had a crisis structure with 160 psychologists providing help, but we couldn't follow up on it. So we just matched people. We never followed up whether actually the match was okay, because it was a crisis thing. We knew that after 4 months, the PTSD symptoms and any other symptoms and just being isolated they increased. So we know it from the research in Ukraine itself, because we also had 2 million displaced people before. So it's not new for us, the crisis. So that's what we decided, okay, what will be next? And our psychologists started burning out because they were displaced themselves. They did it for free. And they got all these difficult cases that we didn't follow up. So we decided to actually make them work legally in the Netherlands. So we decided to lobby in the parliament, and that resulted in the motion being voted for in the parliament, and that pushed the government to create not just to create ways how to go around the law, but actually push the lawmakers to make a law that allows people to actually work legally without having language barrier. And then afterwards, while the parliamentaries were pushing the government, we were advising the government how to do it. So we made a plan, actually, how exactly, and connected with other organizations that provide kind of payroll services. And together we created a plan of implementation for the whole country that is now, and I think tomorrow I will get to the news whether it's approved, but it's like 90% now approved. But so that's like a bit like a story of how from zero crisis mode, you end up pushing the parliament to do it. And I think knowing the Netherlands for a long time, I think it's quite historic to be able to do in 8 months from zero to actually make sure that it's not that 1 or 2 municipalities hire psychologists. They already do that. That's not, but that actually there is a paper that will come out in the mid-December where it says, okay, this is the way you do it, and these are the criteria you do it, and actually you are allowed to do it, so that all the structures are not necessarily, like they're not afraid to include people who don't speak the language necessarily very well. So this is our project from zero to now. Now we are also working on the reporting structure. We do exactly the same. There is not a reporting structure in the Netherlands when people have a complaint. We have a lot of Ukrainian lawyers in the team who process requests because people ask us in Ukrainian about their problems, and lawyers cannot work here legally either, actually. So we thought, okay, if people address the lawyers, they cannot work as lawyers. So unfortunately, we can't train them in Dutch law. But what we can do, we can use them in kind of creating and analyzing cases and escalating the cases. And in the end, create a reporting system, because at this moment, after the municipality, there is nothing people can report their complaints to. So if they report to municipality and the municipality says sorry or doesn't react to a complaint, people have nowhere to go. So, and that results of people being kicked out in the streets with no, people being resulted going in the centers, people who have no idea what to, so it creates so many problems by the fact that there's not even a vertrouwpersoon in Dutch, so there is not a person of trust you can even tell your problem officially. So you can have like a social worker or somebody, but not designated from the government, someone who is not a part of the whole structure, but people can come with their problems. And now we do exactly the same. So we escalated, we made the reporting system, and we meanwhile trying to work out actually a policy solution of how the government can actually implement the reporting system, and that probably in 4 months. So yeah, this is a bit what we do. What we continue actually doing.
Wow.
It's a lot, it's not a bit.
I'm very impressed. You've been doing so much. I think you mentioned a few key issues which I'd like to sort of to summarize, because you've told us so much. I think first, you identify with the issue, and that makes it a lot less problematic, and that's been really helpful for what you're doing. Secondly, you set up a Pora together with other people, creating crisis response. First generation, let's say, crisis response, urgent crisis response, with like sharing information, translation, a help desk, a knowledge hub on a website, mobilizing professionals to help in translation, but also psychologists and legal help. The second iteration of that, like when it didn't work anymore, or when people started to burn out, what then? And then you find a way of sort of analyzing what's happening and escalating cases maybe to local governments, to national governments, to the media, meanwhile offering solutions, not just sort of merely pointing it out, and even going to parliament. Wow, that's a quick learning curve. I'm glad you made it to this session. What to say after this story? I mean, maybe this is a good moment to also to briefly, because we're actually almost at 8 o'clock already, briefly a quick response. But maybe before that, I know you're not a public organization with a house on the street like Independent School, which you can visit. You have a building. But still, I want to ask you this question. Do you have an invitation or a request to people in the audience of how maybe they can help you, or maybe you can help them, or something, some call for action?
Yeah, I think that like when people say, okay, what is your mission plan? Our mission is to make sure to prevent the problem, and when there is a crisis, to fix it. So it's very difficult because we don't always know when the crisis comes. But when it is a crisis, we really need help, you know. So, and that can be not just, so if you think about from consultancy perspective or solution-based perspective, whenever there is a problem, we find a solution. We are very different professionals. So there are academics, there are people who are consultants, for UNUN consultants, we have in a team, just people who are, have very different backgrounds. And this is exactly where sometimes we do need help. So if you notice that there is a problem, you can come to us and then we can think together about its solution. And the same other way around. If you see a problem and we need help in finding the solution, and that, and sometimes you think like, how can I, if I'm an architect or an urban planner, how can I help? Well, I also didn't do all of it, before. Okay, I did part of it, but nobody ever told me how to talk with Dutch politicians, for instance. I even don't speak Dutch so well. So everything, if you want to help, you can also learn these skills. And for us, it's also always a nice feeling when there is another person who can join. And we have an advocacy team. This is an open group, actually, for those people who are interested in thinking about creative solutions. And this is, we meet once a week, and then this is something where everybody can contribute. And then everybody can bring on the table the problem. So it can be any problem. And then together with the team, we decide, okay, for this next 5 months, these 3 will be our key, the most important problems. So yeah, this is, I think, exactly where anyone who is interested in thinking creatively about the problems, yeah, you're welcome.
Everyone is welcome to notice a problem, discuss it, together look at possible solutions. When and where to do that? Once a week meetups. When is the next meetup and where? And how to know where to join?
Yeah, I can. You can always write the communication Opora Foundation NL. So
communication at oporafoundation.nl.
Yeah. So this is exactly where you can get all information about when. Usually it's every Thursday in the morning or afternoon, but we also ask people their availability. So that's always a problem. So more people we have who are new, more kind of flexible we are. And it is always, we call it lobby coffee meeting. So it's always with a coffee in the morning and also in the afternoon as well, if you are tired. And it's like, if we try not to make it more 40 minutes, and then afterwards we divide in small groups, and every group has a project. Like it can be small project of and then more engaged to become more projects or more kind of responsibilities you can get also trying to lobby yourself, I don't know, in your own municipality. So that's it.
Wow, thank you. Communication at oporafoundation.nl, weekly 40 minutes meetings with coffee, online.
Yeah, this is online. And from January we'll have an office, but we'll tell when.
Wow.
We are now still deciding.
So it's actually already 8 o'clock. I think this is good. It's a good moment to ask a last question, maybe, to all the speakers. You've told us a lot, the panelists, about your very different organizations and your approaches, and maybe some of the lessons you learned and how you developed over time, and some invitations and calls for action. Did you already know each other, or how involved are you with each other? I think this is a question that comes to my mind. Are you working already together a bit or not? Or maybe is it not necessary to do so? Or is it? I mean, I could see a lot of relationships between the stories you told. Had you worked together? So yes. Any comments on institutional collaboration? Because I'm very curious if that occurs and to what extent. As a final question, I think, before we go to the closing and the network links. Julia, I think you wanted to say something about it?
Yeah, maybe. Thank you. So what I noticed from at the beginning of the war, it was I think second day, and there's a huge, there's this foundation Ukrainians in the Netherlands, and they set up already a long time ago a chat, I think Telegram and WhatsApp. It was channel where all Ukrainians that study, work, or just live in the Netherlands could join. And before the full-scale invasion, it was mostly for some cultural events or just some exchanges, some professional groups they were then divided in. But so with the start of this all, it was within a few hours that groups were created, focused on humanitarian help, on refugees, on what was that there were more. I think there were also lobby and advocacy group for in the beginning, in the first months, there were a lot of meetups with the burgemeesters, mayors of big cities that wanted to hear the Ukrainian perspective. So the like kind of people, volunteers from that group, they also visited, even ministers and the king. So we kind of the people from this group lobbied it up to it was amazing to see how connected everyone was, and there were people who were had full-time jobs, like I think like you and me and most of you who joined that initiative as well, and but like everything was set apart, and then we were working quite a lot on first humanitarian questions, and then more and more on refugees and lobby and advocacy. So yes, and I saw that with during the summer months, some of the initiatives they were stopped because there was like they went to different channels, and some of them were institutionalized, like Oksana Savchuk, do you pronounce? Yeah, right. That's correct name, right? So there were you founded the Ukrainian Center in Rotterdam. There's another initiative like that in Haarlem. In so there's like in many big cities. Did I say something wrong?
Oh, I didn't found it. It was a municipality who did, so I can't.
But still, you're the initiative taker. Extra credits for that. But what I mean to say is that there were a lot of Ukrainians who just started cooperating, started doing some things, and then it grew up, and like mushrooms in initiatives. And now we see with Maria's example how important it is and how much you can get done if you're continue going.
Okay. Final comments before we ask Sasha again on stage and have the closing comments, or was this a good response already? Yeah?
Maybe I can ask an invitation?
Yeah, please. An invitation is always welcome.
Well, everybody shared an invitation, so I also felt like sharing invitation. This Saturday at Belvedere Verhalenhuis, we'll have a super small project. It's going to be a magazine about stories from Ukrainian displaced people, about the road, the trip they made from Ukraine to the Netherlands. So everybody is welcome in Belvedere Verhalenhuis, Story House at Rotterdam at 7 this Saturday. The snacks will be provided by a Ukrainian chef.
Wonderful. Belvedere on Saturday. Thank you very much.
Maybe one more.
One more.
Just a small comment. Because like when I was in the train towards Rotterdam, I was also thinking, like, if I look at the UNUN network now, it's kind of still the organizations that are part of it are still a lot of Rotterdam, The Hague-based organizations, and I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of initiatives in Amsterdam, in other places in
Utrecht,
country,
especially also.
in Utrecht. So the country is bigger, I know, like in the whole country. No, but it would be good to find a connection also with them. So if you know about other initiatives that actually should, that the UN network should connect to in a more official way, I would be glad to take the role upon me to kind of make that connection. But they have to be like, I also don't know who I don't know.
Thank you very much, connecting beyond the Randstad. I think that's it for this panel. Thank you so much. Oh, is there one more? No?
Just comment regarding Utrecht.
Did you want to say something, or was it Sasha? Sasha.
Just regarding Utrecht, maybe Nikita knows something.
Yeah.
Nikita knows something regarding Utrecht. Maybe. Is this? Do you want to say something about Utrecht or not? No?
We will do that with the network.
Yeah.
Final comments?
I've just heard some really good news, and that's that the TU Delft, for those who are looking for, my name is Julie Lawson. I'm an adjunct professor at RMIT University in Australia, but I live here. But I've just heard today that TU Delft, for those who are looking for formal education or certified, like points or something to round off a study, TU Delft approved today an elective of called Tools for Recovery, which is a beautiful sounding course, but it's going to be also online and in person at TU Delft. You can get points for it and register apparently, but you can also just attend and perhaps get a certificate that says I was there. So that's a formal course delivered by and in collaboration and in moderation with Ukrainian advisors. It'll be run from April. So there's time to think about whether it's interesting for you or not. And contact me if you want to know more about it. We'll make sure it goes on the UNUN website. Okay.
Thank you so much for adding that. And I think this is the Faculty of Architecture that is doing this, or not?
It's urbanism, it's broader. So it's everything to do with architecture, urban planning, land policy, circular economy, energy efficiency, histories of recovery, learning from other places, and it brings in quite a diverse range of international and national Ukrainian contributors. So it should be pretty amazing.
In April, thank you very much. From April onwards. All right, a lot of calls for action and welcomes. Thank you so much to this panel. Thank you for your contributions. Sasha, Oleksandra, we have some announcements, but before we get into the announcements, maybe quickly a question to you. Is there something that you learned or noticed? I mean, we had a very large overview of many different initiatives, some of them more institutional, some of them very Dutch, some of them Ukrainian, many of them collaborative, most of them, but also bottom-up, sort of grassroots initiatives. People seem to know each other. How far did we get since May? It looks like a lot of work was done. I'm impressed, at least. Any reflections before we go into the announcements?
Yeah, well, we went far, and of course, like, not all of this initiative are part of UNUN. But it's nice to be in contact with others and look for the synergy, what we can do. But also, according to Mike, there is still a lot of work need to be done to understand who else is doing something. And yeah, so we've been in contact already with European organizations, but maybe we should also look next to yourself to check what is still here. And it's nice to see also that we talk not only like exactly what we are doing specifically, but also on some meta level on like approaches. For example, like the last speaker said, like, how would you deal with this situation? And yeah, different ways that we can work.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I have a few announcements mentioned here, and perhaps you have the same ones. Do you want to take the lead, or shall I?
No, I will just tell about the networking members. Okay,
okay. Well, maybe let's start with telling about the net. Do you need slides for that, or one? Please put it on when you are ready. Can you connect it?
Yeah, while I'm fixing technical things. Now we're going to start with the drinks, and as we said, it's going to be a bit guided networking drinks. Because, well, it's usually, as everybody, I think people who move to Netherlands from Ukraine, one of the first thing we notice that this is like networking part is one of the most important things why you go to all kind of events like this. But today we decide to guide it a bit because it's usually getting a bit like, people stick to the same group to the people they know. But what we want to get from it is, as I told you previously, that we have some that we have some groups. And if you already have some interest in specific group, like in architecture, landscape, so we arrange this space there. And you will find each of the group, like there are tables with the sign which group is there. And you will find these people there next to the table. So if you want to talk to somebody who is specifically about architecture or landscape, and not only like to speak to these people, but I assume if you go to toward that table, you're also interested. So you just like, it's in a way that you can find people with the same interest as you have, because you all quite have different backgrounds. So next to inspiration table, you can find Saskia Nafs, which takes care of the website, of the lectures, studio visits, and these kind of things. This is one of our groups. Then next to table of education, you can find Pavlo and Tatiana, who are in contact with TU and Ukrainian institutions, as with Academy of Amsterdam and so on. If you have any things to talk about education, find these people. Then next to table of urban development, you will find Elena Shevchenko. Next to sustainability, Oksana Naryzhna. Landscape, Aminik and Anastasia. Architecture, Patrick and Alexandra. And housing policies, Julie and me. And if you have any general questions, you can talk to me or to Barbara. And Eileen, who helped us a lot today with organizing this event. Yeah, thank you. And one more thing that I forgot, very important thing to tell about UNUN, that we always try to see that there is a good mix of Dutch, Ukrainian, and Ukrainian who are flee here, and also the ones that are here for a long time. That's it from my side.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there some upcoming events also we need to mention apart from the ones that we already were invited for by the panelists, or no? Anything about a website explanation, email address, or Instagram account? Was mentioned in my notes, but maybe that's not relevant now. I don't know. Okay, well then we can just...
Well, you can find all the information on our website, and there is also info email in the website that you can find, and also we have an Instagram, and Tanya helping us with updates there.
Wonderful. So unun.nu is the website, and
yes,
all the information is there from the organizers of this series of events. I think this is the moment to say thank you very much to all of you in the audience, to our panelists, to the municipality of Rotterdam, providing us with this beautiful space and the drinks you're going to drink in a moment, and also other support in the background. One of the directors of one of the directories in the municipality was going to be here but could not make it at the last moment, unfortunately, so they're very much also involved. Thank you to Architecture Institute Rotterdam. Barbara is going to be a director on one of the tables. Eileen, as you said in the back, is modestly sitting in the back and did a lot of work. So thank you, and we look forward to having drinks with you now, and we look forward to future events. Thank you so much.